bringing you a kid-friendly radio show. Every Saturday afternoon on YouTube. Broadcasting live at 1 o'clock. Broadcasting live at 1 o'clock.
Hello and welcome to episode 64 of the Brit Show with me, Ethan. Cut up on today's show is my interview with Angus Parker, who runs a $4 million business behind the Ali Abdaal YouTube channel with over 3.4 million subscribers. So let's get straight into my interview with Angus Parker. Welcome on the show. He runs a $4 million business behind the Ali Abdaal YouTube channel with over 3 million subscribers. It's Angus Parker. How are you doing today?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
It's okay. That's good. So if people don't know who you are, explain to them what you do.
So basically, I run the business behind Ali's YouTube channel. I joined Ali about 3 years ago, and I have different titles. We don't really do titles in this company, but from general manager to integrator to COO, essentially what I'm doing is keeping things running behind the scenes, making sure that there are revenues going up, making sure people are doing what they're told to do, managing the whole team. We've got a team of 13 people, so essentially overseeing the running of the business behind Ali's channel, because it's far more than just a YouTube channel.
Yeah, I think quite a lot of people will be surprised about that, and that's a really good explanation. So if someone doesn't know what YouTube is and how there can be a whole business around it, what do you, and if they ask you what you do, what would you say?
Oh, the question relatives have been asking me for the last 3 years. So it's difficult to explain to a certain extent, but YouTube is, as everyone knows, a video hosting platform. But over the last 3, 5, 10 years, to a certain extent, a number of creators who have audiences have managed to leverage that audience and build businesses around it. YouTube is, and video itself is becoming a more and more important marketing tool for businesses, and more people are recognizing that. Which is how influencer marketing has developed through sponsors and things like that. So that's one area of monetization, and how the business, to a certain extent, Ali's business certainly developed out of AdSense from YouTube itself. So there's a share of AdSense that gets shared to people on YouTube, but also sponsors, people who are running ads through channels like Ali's. And that kind of lays the groundwork for how a YouTube channel can not only make money, but then also develop out into a business. And with Ali's channel, we've developed a number of different revenue streams away from that, which has allowed us to expand and grow as a business more holistically, as Ali has grown from not just a YouTuber, but also now writing a book and things like that. So it's difficult to explain how it makes money to a certain extent, but those are kind of the very basic, very surface level foundations of where things started, and then things have developed since then. But yeah, that's a very, very quick overview. Generally, if relatives ask, I either lie or I say that, yeah, I work in online education, because saying you work for a YouTuber then requires a lot of explanation. But Ali's stuff is educational, so I don't think I'm really lying by saying I work in online education. But yeah, that's where we're at.
Yeah. So you mentioned all the different revenue streams there.
Yeah.
So what are the main sort of for you in Ali's business?
Yeah. So as I said, we have the AdSense and sponsors on the main YouTube channel.
So that's like the traditional YouTube business as such. Yeah,
that's the traditional side of things, and that brings in probably between 10-15% of the overall revenue for the business. So sponsors this year will probably be around $500,000 for the main channel.
Wow.
And then we've got sort of the Deep Dive podcast as well, which also has sponsors on it, which is generate about 100,000. And then AdSense generally brings in, depending on which videos you make, because that has a big impact on the money you make from them. That generally brings in between 300, 400,000. So it's probably up to about 20% of the overall revenue of the business. We then have kind of connected to the YouTube channel. And the other thing that Ali started off early on is sort of affiliates. So products that I mentioned, we have affiliate links or books and things like that. That's a fairly kind of low level metric. We don't generally generate too much revenue from that. It's generally around sort of 10 to 20K a month, which comes to, you know, around 150, 200K for the whole year. And then we have courses. So we have a number of courses on Skillshare, which was it's a course hosting platform. And that was the first thing that really kind of took the business to the next level after the initial sponsors and AdSense on YouTube. Back in 2020, we started posting courses on Skillshare and using Ali's audience and the leverage that provides. It was since June of 2020, it's generated over $60,000 a month consistently for the last 2.5 years, which is it still amazes me how mental that is. And you get paid on minutes watched as well as referrals and conversions, but it's still per minute watched. It's not great, but because of the size of Ali's audience and he built it up for 3 years, it meant that it's just that it's the audience is there. So that was one thing that, as I said, has generates sort of between 600 and 800,000 pounds every year, depending on how successful the courses have been. And we've now got 13, 14 courses on there. We release one more or less every quarter, give or take. So that's like another important stream of revenue. Then we've got PTYA, which is our main kind of flagship YouTube course. Ali and I started that in late 2020, and that's sort of been the main revenue driver for the past 2 years. We've now done 6 cohorts of that. Most cohorts, but certainly cohort 3, 4, and 5, made over $1 million each, and so that generated a large amount of revenue, and that's been for the last kind of 2 financial years been accounting for roughly sort of 50-60% of the overall revenue of the company. It's a very lucrative product, which kind of was created initially very quickly, and we moved quickly and put out our first kind of version of it, and we've iterated on it over time, but that's been one of the most successful parts of the business. And then moving down from that, we have kind of other sponsors on like the newsletter. So Ali has a weekly newsletter, which has got 165,000 subscribers, with a really high open rate. And since May, we've been running sponsors on that, and that's generated about £80,000 in sponsors since May.
Oh, wow.
So that's another kind of revenue stream which we've only really started this year, and that's something which hopefully we can build upon next year. We only started sponsoring it this year. Sorry, it's been being built up as a newsletter for the past however many years, 4 or 5 years. And then beyond that, I think that's probably about it. There probably are some small things which I'm kind of forgetting, but those are the main ones. And yeah, as you said at the start, last year we made just over $4 million. I know there's a video on our channel that says 4.7, but that included some personal investments as well. And then this year we're on track to get about 10 to 15% higher than that this year. So yeah, it's growing, which is great. Yeah, it's a bit of a breakdown. I hope that helps.
Yeah. So you mentioned Ali's part-time YouTube Academy. So if people don't know what that is, tell them what it is.
Yes, it's a live cohort-based course, which is run over a new different length of time, but it's either 4, 5, or 6 weeks. It's gone through various different iterations. The next cohort is actually going to be 4 weeks long, whereby Ali delivers live classes every week. There's like assignments every week. We provide feedback to people, and it's essentially giving people the basics of starting, but also leveling up their YouTube channel. We've had people go through that course who've now got hundreds of thousands of subscribers. We've had a number of success stories from it over the past 2 years. And it's basically born out of the fact that Ali has, at the time, he had over 1 million subscribers. He had the credibility there. And we saw that there was a gap in the market for a cohort-based course that actually covered YouTube and provided value to people. There's a lot of courses out there, sure people are aware of online courses, which they might see advertised on videos like this one on YouTube, which are, if I'm honest, pretty crap. There's a lot of courses out there that are awful. We're trying to buck the trend with that. We're trying to over deliver on value, support students as much as possible, because ultimately the success of PTYA will depend on the success of students on YouTube, because people will see subscriber numbers as a metric of success more than anything. But over the past 2 years, we've definitely changed the lives of a number of people, whether that's through subscriber count itself, or some people have started new careers as a result of doing the course. Some people have moved, moved countries, and so many different things have happened to people because of this course, the people they've met, people they've interacted with. It's been such a kind of very sort of satisfying thing to run when you see the amount of change that you can and impact you can have on people's lives, not just on the YouTube thing, which is kind of the title of the course, but it goes way beyond that. And that's been quite satisfying to see. That's kind of what it is. And cohort-based courses are something which we kind of took advantage of. There was an opportunity during the pandemic when cohort-based courses really came into their own, and that's when we started PTYA. And I say we took advantage of it, but I think it was more accidental than deliberate, in the sense that we thought this would work, and it happened to be still November 2020. So whether we were in lockdown or out of lockdown, I can't exactly remember, but numerous people around the world were still locked down, and I think that definitely did help at the start. But obviously it succeeded way beyond pandemic time. So it clearly has longevity, but that's kind of where it started and what it is.
Yeah. So what is your role in the part-time YouTuber Academy?
Right now, not a lot, because I'm kind of the general manager of the whole business, and so I manage the person who product manages the part-time YouTuber Academy in cohorts. So we've now done 6 cohorts. In cohort 1, 2, 3, and kind of 4, I was overseeing the whole thing, kind of gradually getting more and more hands off as it went through, as we employed more people. But now we have a team of 3 people who are employed full-time to manage the course. So we've got a product manager, we've got an operations lead, and we've got a student success lead as well. And then during the course, we employ a further 10 to 12 people as like student supporters, who provide feedback on everyone's videos, who provide one-to-one calls with students. Yeah, it's a big operation, and takes up a lot of time, which is why it's useful for me to be able to delegate it to someone else now, because it is a big commitment. But that's also partly because it's such a big and important part of the company that we want to put effort and impact into it to make sure that it does provide value to students, and it can continue to be something which we have as a very key financial aspect of part of the business. So my role, going back to the original question, it's very much just sort of overseeing, keep things running as it is for other parts of the company. And at the moment, it's a case of working out how we can develop other parts of the company to make sure that we're not so reliant on PTYA, because at the moment it's taking up, as I said, 50-60% of the revenue, and that's not the best place to be in from a business perspective. And so it's, from my perspective as running the whole company and keeping an eye on the top line revenue and how that breaks down, is making sure that things are, I listed off a number of different revenue streams there, but we're still somewhat out of balance with that one thing being the majority. And that's something that we're trying to work on at the moment. The PTYA is something which it's been one of the most successful things we've done over the past 2 years for sure.
Yeah. So as you said, it has been successful. I saw on Ali's video last year alone, it made $2.5 million in revenue. So how does that feel, that a thing that you helped start and run makes that kind of money?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because I think there's a certain extent to which, I was actually chatting about this to someone else on the team the other day. When I'm at work and in the business, those numbers seem like, oh, great, they're fine. When I go home and think about it, I'm like, shit, that's a lot of money. I think there's a degree to which, as I said, like with Skillshare generating $60,000 a month since June 2020, or what, which it has done, I think there's a degree of sort of almost hedonic adaptation. You kind of become accustomed to those numbers, and for some reason, the fact that Skillshare only made $55,000 last month or whatever, it's like, oh no. Whereas actually, if you put it in perspective, it's like, that's I know that that's more than most people earn in a year, and that's
Yeah.
mind blowing. And so I don't probably reflect on it enough how much like 2.5 million is, going back to the original question of P2IA. And it doesn't necessarily cross my mind that it is quite as much as it is, and it's more just that's my job, that's what we do, that's what we've done, and move on to the next thing, kind of thing. But yeah, it is. When I think about how it started, which was on a coffee table in Ali's house nearly 2 years ago, nearly 2 years ago, on a Monday afternoon in October, with some sticky notes, and it turned into this thing which is now generated, I think, probably across the 6 cohorts, nearly $4 million. It's a bit mad. It is a bit mad.
Yeah. So that is just insane numbers to think about. And going back to when you're talking to people and about your job, and if you tell them that a business run off at the start off a YouTube channel has over 20 employees and has had $4 million in revenue last year, are like the people surprised?
Yes. I often it's often a it's I have said before, it's often a tactic of making them actually sit up and pay attention when you say work for you say work for a YouTuber, and oh yeah, great, and I was like, yeah, and it made $4 million last year. Oh, okay. Really, it is a valid career to go down. But then equally, there's also the you have to face the skepticism of people being like, a YouTuber making loads of money. People, there are, as I mentioned earlier, loads of people who have doubts about that kind of thing, and that's something that you have to kind of face. And it's quite difficult to deal with that when I know that all the stuff that we do is very value driven and made entirely properly and stuff like that. But people generally are surprised when they hear it's making that much money, especially things like Skillshare and the success of P2IA, and when you compare it to the success of other kind of startups and businesses, and suddenly you see that this has made $4 million from the last 2.5 years. And sometimes I watch things like Dragon's Den, and you see people talking about the numbers they've made, and I'm like, oh, we made more than that with P2A. But yeah, so people are generally surprised, but it also kind of sometimes makes them sit up and respect it a bit more. I've certainly found that with some people, which is it's useful to have that, but it's also somewhat depressing that it takes that for people to sit up and respect it. I think hopefully that will change over the next 5 to 10 years as more and more people begin to make careers out of being a quote unquote YouTuber / developing a career from YouTube, which hopefully I suspect you're aspiring to do as well. So I think as I'm gonna say our generation, I'm gonna boot myself with you, Ethan, even though I know you're much younger than me. As our generation comes through, we should be able to kind of change that perception, I think, because I think it's the slightly older generation who, to be perfectly fair, like didn't grow up with YouTube, didn't grow up with the internet, and so it's totally understandable that for them it does seem quite alien to a certain extent. But I think as things change over the next 10 to 15, 20 years, I think that idea of you can make money with YouTube or whatever platform comes along next. I don't know the future of YouTube. Hopefully it will have a longevity, but you never know. People will start to kind of respect that a bit more. But yeah, it's one of those things which it's always a difficult question to answer. But yeah, one which sometimes quite fun to answer as well, to a certain extent, especially if there's someone that you you want to prove a point to.
Yeah, and you mentioned about the perception, and I think like the perception is changing a little bit more now for YouTubers, but obviously but what's even newer is people around that YouTuber creating a whole business, like your job. So that's even more like, oh wow, you work for a YouTuber, you're not just a YouTuber.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I actually think over the next 5 to 10 years, I actually think the role that I'm in and the roles around creators will become kind of ever more important as creators realize that they need not only people supporting them on the business side of things, but also just on like the tasks of being a creator, whether that's the admin side of being a PA or that those kind of things. To if you're a YouTuber, like script writing and research, which is where I kind of started with Ali back in 2020. There are so many people that are after those skills and after those resources, and as more and more people realize that, and this kind of new media starts to become more appealing and potentially more lucrative than traditional media, I think more and more people will start to be drawn towards online writing, online whatever it takes, whatever it means, over the next kind of 5 to 10 years. I think that is where the future will kind of be most focused. I don't actually think creators will be the main focus. It will be the businesses around creators and the people who are employed within those. So I'm quite hopeful for like that my position that I'm in now, which didn't exist 5 to 10 years ago, will become more of a norm over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And that whole idea that you mentioned around, oh, you work for a YouTuber, should just be like, oh, you work, you're employed by a YouTuber. Just like, if you were saying, oh, I work for a startup run by an entrepreneur, now is like kind of respected. It will be hopefully like that in 5 to 10 years time.
And like it must feel, because you're probably part of one of kind of like the first generations of these YouTube businesses, but you're setting an example in the UK, because there's a couple of people that does it in America, like Linus Tech Tips, with over I think 80 staff he's got now, which is just incredible to think. It started on a YouTube channel and now there's 80 people, and it's a decent sized scale company. And as you said, that could be the future. So let's wind back a little bit and go right back to the start. What were you like as a kid?
Oh wow, right back to the start.
Right back.
Wow, I haven't been asked that in a while. What's I like as a kid? What was I like as a kid? How would I describe myself as a kid? Bloody hell. I've just come off another interview where I was just talking about the business, and now you throw me right back into the personal life.
We'll get back to the business later on.
Yeah, fairly. I mean, I was very much into my sport. I'm very sporty, and so I was very much always outgoing, doing rugby, cricket, football, kind of all the classic sports, I guess. YouTube wasn't necessarily a massive thing on my radar. I mean, it wasn't even invented until I was like 8 or 9, so it couldn't have been. But that sort of thing, I was fairly kind of hardworking academic to a certain extent as well. I guess I probably bordered on the nerd side of things. But yeah, I don't know how else I would describe myself as a kid. Reasonably outgoing, yeah. I don't know. I literally haven't thought about that question for a while. So excuse my flummoxed nature, but yeah.
No, it's fine. So like, what did your parents do as a work?
Yeah, so my mum is a teacher. She actually taught me a couple of years when I was younger, which was strange.
Oh wow.
Yeah, she's got the same school I was at, which was interesting. Get to the question of like, do you call her mum or her name or her surname? Like, anyway. And my dad did a number of different things, but then about 20 years ago, or about 18 years ago, he became a gardener. So he's been a gardener for the last 18 years.
Oh, wow.
And he wished he'd done that all his life. Before that, he'd worked in like banking, TV, he'd been a policeman for a bit. He'd gone through a lot of different jobs. But then about 20 years ago, he collapsed in London, actually.
Oh dear.
And that kind of made him reassess things. And because they couldn't work out why, I don't know why I'm providing this detail, but I may as well. I've gone down this route. Because they couldn't work out why he'd collapsed, they took away his license, which kind of made him reflect that he couldn't actually commute back and forth to London doing the job he was doing. Then he realized he kind of wanted to explore the gardening option, and just kind of never looked back, and he wished he'd worked outside all his life. Hates working in office, didn't understand why he did it for so long. He's been a gardener for the last 18, 19 years. That's kind of what I've known him mostly as. And my mum's always been a teacher. So yeah, nothing really to do with YouTube or video or anything, but that's what they do.
Yeah, so it's great. He found his dream job. And as you mentioned, your mum was a teacher. My mum was a primary school teacher as well.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
do you think in any way that did influence your parents' careers?
Um, hmm. I think what has influenced me is kind of my dad's attitude towards kind of finding, like you said, with the gardening thing, is like finding what you want to do and not being uh taken down the route of what potentially university, school, society more generally wants you to go down. Like, for
Yeah,
example, when I was at university, all the society fairs were dominated by consultancy firms, finance firms. What's the other corporate firm? I don't know. Those are the two main ones. And there's so much pressure to go into those particular lines. And I went to Cambridge, and a lot of people from Cambridge go into those sectors and work in those sectors. And even when I was at Cambridge, I went to those fairs knowing that I shouldn't be doing this, because I know fundamentally I don't want to do this, but you
yeah,
get kind of just taken in and drawn in by that kind of opportunity. And I think to a certain extent, going back to your question, I was influenced by kind of my dad's attitude towards that, being like, don't, basically saying to me, don't do what I did and waste many years of your life in an office that you don't like working in and doing stuff that you think you should be doing rather than doing stuff you want to do.
yeah,
And there's always that push and pull when you're at that age of like 17 to 21, probably, where you're trying to work out what you want to do as a career. And especially in like the modern world, I don't think there is such a thing as like one career. People have portfolio careers now, and there's that current kind of tussle between the former working world, whereby people had one career for like 30 years and they worked in the office of a bank 30 stories up and did that every day, getting to work at 7 a.m. and leaving at 10 p.m. Whatever. Sounds awful. Um, and I was very much influenced by my dad in that sense of not wanting to go down that route. And so I think after leaving uni, it was very much I wanted to do something that was more media based, because I'd done that at university as well. And even though I knew fundamentally that's not as well paid, or the financial compensation for the roles in the media and journalism and things like that are not comparable to go straight into a consultancy job or straight into a finance job. I knew that was kind of the route that I wanted to take, and then working for Ali kind of fell out of that accidentally. It wasn't necessarily I didn't leave university thinking, right, I want to go and work for Ali Abdaal. But that's how it's happened. So yeah, I think certainly kind of my dad's attitude towards the work has definitely influenced where I've been, and it's also influenced kind of the fact I've stayed with Ali as well, because my parents have been, and I think I probably would have stayed anyway, but they've been always like very understanding and accepting about what I'm doing. They've never been the ones that I've needed to take ages trying to explain what I do and justify what I do. They've always been like, you're doing
yeah.
that, it's amazing, carry on, kind of thing. Which is great. And so it's useful to have that kind of support behind me as well. Yeah, so their attitudes to work have definitely in hindsight probably influenced my choices as well quite a lot.
Yeah. So what did you want to be when you were at like the primary school age?
What do I want to be at primary school age? I mean, I think in deep down I probably wanted to be like a professional footballer or something. A sport, someone making money from doing sport. But I didn't have like any underlying ambitions to do a certain profession. I don't think. Sport was my main interest, the main thing I did, like day in, day out, wherever, whenever, watched it, played it. But I think as I grew up from like primary school to secondary school, the ambitions kind of changed to something more realistic. Probably going into broadcasting and the media side of things, given that I came to realize that my sporting capabilities probably didn't put me in a position to be able to do sport professionally on the pitch. Therefore, how could I get into sport off the pitch? And broadcasting seemed to be a prime opportunity to do that, which then led into university doing a lot of radio stuff, a lot of commentary, a lot of and also a lot of just general news-based journalism as well. So I had a general interest in that. So that's kind of my evolution of what I wanted to do, which then eventually led to me getting offered to do a master's in broadcast journalism when I joined Ali, which I then ended up turning down to stay with Ali instead.
Wow.
So yeah, that's kind of how I've evolved in terms of what I wanted to do.
So, like, after school, did you want to go into more of that traditional media, TV, radio, more of that traditional scene?
Yeah, I did. I always knew I didn't want to go into kind of print media, like newspapers and that kind of thing. I wanted to do more multimedia and broadcasting stuff. As I said, I did a fair amount at university. I was lucky enough to commentate on a number of the varsity matches at Twickenham and Lords and things like that. And that I found really exciting and energizing. And so if I was to do anything, it would probably go down more of that route and more of the radio route, but radio focused on news and sport rather than, music or stuff. So that's kind of what I was thinking when I came out of university.
Yeah.
But equally, I had seen some of my peers who were in years above have similar ambitions and then not necessarily be able to execute on them after leaving, partly because it's so competitive, the whole broadcast journalism area. So it is difficult, which is why I think you're definitely doing the right thing by getting as much experience as you can early on, and I think that will definitely stand you in good stead. But I think it's something which everyone should probably be doing, because doing things like this is just invaluable that to have when you get to the age where people will start to be looking to employ you.
Yeah, thank you. And I my dream actually is to go into television and be a TV presenter. And do you think, I'm just generally curious your opinion on this. Do you think that traditional media, TV, radio will still have a place in, say, 10 years?
Oh, interesting question. I think it will, but potentially not in the way that we currently have it. I think there is a scenario in which there will always be a need for some sort of form of TV and radio in the current form, in the sense of news. As we see kind of other streaming services, Netflix, Amazon Prime, whatever, develop, and we think about things like, I still find it mind-blowing that 15 years ago or 16 years ago, whenever an iPlayer started, and before that, we couldn't rewatch stuff once it was broadcast. So I think there will be a place for it, but I just don't think it will be as extensive as it currently is. If anything, it's going to be strange in the sense that it will almost come full circle, and the number of channels that are needed will probably decrease back to, I don't think it'll go back to what it was originally, which was like 3 channels, but I think it will decrease back to like potentially just news and then whatever you want to watch, rather than news and then this particular program is on at 9 o'clock on a Monday and you have to watch it then, or you won't see it at all. It'll just be like, well, this is going to be released at 9 o'clock and you can watch it, whenever and wherever. I don't think there will be that sort of live broadcast of TV programs probably in 10, 15 years time.
Yeah, and you say
I think, it's difficult to know, really.
Yeah, but even like the BBC, which is probably one of the most traditional broadcasters, it's been around for 100 years this year, but even they are releasing all of their, like, some of their drama programs, they're releasing it all on iPlayer. They're also showing it on TV, but you can watch that. You can binge watch them. You can watch them whenever you want. Even a traditional broadcaster like the BBC are doing that now as well. So you mentioned you went to university at Cambridge. So what did you study there? I
studied geography.
Totally different.
Yeah, it's totally different. I'm very much on the human side of the geography spectrum, though. I hate studying rivers and mountains and what people probably consider typical geography. I much prefer the kind of socio-political, economic side of geography. My dissertation was on the migrant crisis in the Mediterranean and things like that. So it's I got far more interest out of that side of things than the maybe more stereotypical geography. As I said, studying landscapes and rivers, which I just found innately boring. It was good. I really enjoyed it.
So, because you did say you did see that media path even when you left school, so why didn't you decide to do a media related degree?
Good question. I don't think I saw it as concretely as something which I wanted to pursue, and I think, if I'm being completely honest, I think I saw potentially more value in getting a degree, and if it's a degree from Cambridge, has extra weight, I think, in a subject, and then doing a sort of conversion, if needed, into a more broadcast media role, which is obviously what I was offered and then didn't take, than doing a overtly media degree. I think one of the things that would stop me doing that is I think there was potentially more value in actually just getting work experience than going to do a media first degree. Genuinely, given the costs of university these days, I think unless you can really justify the value of your degree, both in terms of what you're studying and where you're studying, I really don't think there is value in people going to university and getting so saddled with so much debt. I was looking at my student debt repayments at the weekend. I hadn't actually looked at it since I'd left university, and I was like, I wonder what it's down to, and it's down to £36,000. Great, I'm still in £36,000 worth of debt, and I mean that alone is depressing enough. And I've been working for like 2.5 years, and the fact that everyone in this whole generation who are spending £9,000 on, sorry, it's gone very deep and very off topic, but bear with me. The generation of students paying like £9,000 a year for fees plus accommodation and taking out loans for that, and the fact that the interest rate on that money is the RPI, which is like the retail price index, plus 3%, which means that last year.
So I interrupt the interview to tell you that in the middle of Angus's rant about student debt, the Zoom meeting ended. We rejoined and I stupidly forgot to record again until 20 or 30 minutes into the second half. I was really annoyed with myself. But anyway, this was actually the reaction when I realised. Yeah, I've just realised. Yes, priceless. I did record all my video for it, but I didn't record his audio or his video. So I couldn't just use my video. Oh yeah, that's good. Out of no context. That would have been interesting. But yeah, that reaction was priceless. We went back and redid most of the questions, but you did miss Angus ending off his rant. He basically just said how his debt has gone up, even though he's been paying it back for 2.5 years. It just keeps on going up. And then he just said, really, what are the uses of a university degree and whether you should just go into work straight away after the uni. We had a little bit of a chat about that, but yeah, that's what I remember that he said. So let's get back into the interview when I remembered to start recording. So between uni and working for Ali, what was the timeline on that?
Yeah, so I graduated in July 2019, and then I joined Ali in January 2020, and in between that period I was doing various different freelance gigs, did some writing for various geography like journals and things, did a bit of freelance work for Hawkeye, and then joined Ali in January 2020, just out of a cold email, which I'd seen that he did advertising for an editor role a few months previously, and so I kind of referenced that in my email, and went down the route of trying to provide as much value as possible up front by saying, I'm a researcher, writer, can help you do X, Y, Z. And I had spoken to him briefly by email while I was at university, so I had that kind of touch point to reference. And it also helped as well that we were living in the same city, Cambridge, and that kind of definitely helped as well. And it was just good timing, as given that he was at the point where, but he said that he was about to start looking for a writer, researcher anyway. And so I started with him doing 2 or 3 days a week, which then sort of escalated into 5 days a week from April onwards, April 2020. So yeah, that's kind of the timeline between leaving uni and starting to work for Ali.
Yeah. So why did you just decide to cold email him?
Yeah, I think it's something which I think more people should think about doing. A lot of people only look for jobs that are advertised, and the jobs that are advertised on the door, rather than thinking that a closed door is actually an opportunity to knock on the door and ask someone, do they have, like, offer someone some value.
Yeah, great analogy.
So the way I saw it, having done a lot of it at university whilst interviewing people for the news and sport and things like that, I've come to realize that the worst that people can say when you cold email them is like no or ignore you. They're not going to take offense if you're polite and you ask, for something that's not necessarily excessive, and you do it in a way in which comes across well. I said you're just polite, and that had kind of given me the confidence to be able to be comfortable just emailing anyone at any time, and as long as you do it in the right way, which for me is making sure that you're providing value up front, and you're not emailing with the expectation of them offering you work. You're offering them value. Offer them value rather than expect work, I think is the kind of mantra that I would go with.
Yeah.
Obviously you are implicitly expecting work, but you need to make it in such a way that it is the value that you're offering them makes it a no-brainer for them to say yes, or at least trial you out. And yeah, I just think that there's a kind of a broader point there around cold emails and the value of cold emails compared to traditional applications and jobs, which most people are obviously still drawn towards, and to which we are kind of funneled towards from university onwards. And yeah, hopefully that will change us as we move forward into these decades where portfolio careers and the idea that you can have more than one career, more than one job, more than one thing in your 30-year working life becomes more accepted and more normal. Hopefully people will start to do more of that sort of branching out into different areas and being comfortable cold emailing people from a completely different sector to try and work in their area instead of thinking that, go into corporate life at 21 and come out when you're 65.
Yeah. Like you said about cold emailing, like I do that quite a lot with my interviews, and you should see how many emails I have in my inbox without any replies, or saying, sorry, this guy's busy, this person's busy. But if I didn't do that in the first place, I wouldn't have got these amazing interviews with these really interesting people.
Yeah, exactly.
So did you watch him before you emailed? Did you watch Ali before you emailed him?
Not religiously. I was aware of his content and had watched various videos, but I wasn't sort of waiting on the drop of his latest video. And that's kind of how I'd like to employ people working for the business as well. We don't necessarily want people who are massive fans of Ali. But yes, it would be good to know the content, to know the style, to know the tone, to know the brand, to know how we like to present ourselves. But we're not after just employing kind of fans, and that's kind of my approach to it as well. When I joined, I was aware I liked the content, but I wasn't like, as I said, waiting for every video to be released in the sense that a fan might be. So yeah, that's kind of how it was, really.
Yeah, and as you said, because if someone's a fan, they will just follow Ali, whatever he says, even if it might not be the best thing for the channel or the business.
Yeah, exactly.
So So how did you go from being like a writer to now like general manager, head of operations, like running the business?
Yeah,
How did that happen?
good
Because you
question. How did that
because
happen? How did that
because
happen? Yeah.
like what experience did you have in running a business?
Well, none. And that is kind of what I've been developing over the past sort of 2.5 years. And I've got a lot of um, thanks to pay Ali in that respect, in having faith in me to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Especially like this time last year when we were thinking about getting a general manager in, and he decided to scrap that idea and go with me instead, and promote from within, which was nice, and I'm always grateful for. But yeah, so I started off as a writer and then kind of became more of a generalist very quickly. I taught myself how to edit and was quickly editing main channel videos, to ensure that we had kind of capacity to release 3 videos a week, which we were trying to do. And from April to from April onwards, I guess, of that year, I was editing, helping with the YouTube production and producing, obviously still writing and researching, writing Skillshare courses, editing Skillshare courses, and doing all of those things as well.
One man band.
Well, yeah, and I think at that stage when there was only there was 4 of us at that point because Elizabeth had also joined, we are kind of all aware that, especially those of us based in the UK, because Christians and Eds are based in Romania, but all of us in the UK knew that we needed to kind of wear multiple hats, do multiple things, and kind of muck in like any other startup. And then obviously P2A happened in the autumn of that year, and that gave us the funds and a product which we knew we could replicate or do again and again and again in a cohort basis, to be able to hire more people. And so we hired a couple more writers, which allowed me to focus on running P2A. And then I started managing those 2 writers that we hired and anyone else in the business. So I started managing Elizabeth and Christian, who's the editor. And then over the course of 2021, we expanded further. We hired 3 more people over the summer, and then a further 8 people in the autumn. And at that point, we were then up to a team of 18. And I had gone from managing like 3-4 people to managing 9 or 10 people. And then I was also managing managers. So there were people who were managing people below me. And we had quite an involved org structure. And over that time, I've kind of been developing different skills and reading a lot of books, trying to learn a lot from Ali as well, and upskilling in various areas that I know I had deficiencies in. As you pointed out, I haven't run a business, and so I've been kind of learning on the job to a certain extent. And there's various aspects like the accounting side of things, the finance side of things, which I didn't take a finance degree, so those things are stuff that I've had to learn on the job and that kind of thing, which I've actually found quite energizing because learning new stuff is quite I like to find it quite motivating, to be honest. And yeah, so that we were a team of 18, and this summer we actually downsized slightly, so we're now down to a team of 13 people. We haven't actually talked about this publicly yet, but we made 5 people redundant in the summer, and that was partly because we got to a stage whereby we looked at the first 6 months of 2022 and compared it to the first 6 months of 2021. And against those things which were comparable, i.e. stuff we didn't start in the second half of 2021, we were producing less content and making less money, and it was costing us 3 times more. And that kind of made us think, okay, what are we doing wrong? Where have we gone wrong here by hiring all these people? And kind of the result that we had, the conclusion that we came to, which has kind of been, we subsequently heard from other people, it's often a case with startups that expand slightly too quickly, is we had basically over-indexed on the idea that adding more people adds more leverage. Because when Ali goes from having 2 people to 3 people by adding me in, you're kind of adding 50%. When you go from adding 8 people, from 10 to 18 or 15 to 18, those 3 extra people are potentially adding considerably less as a percentage of the overall portion. And yeah, that kind of idea that we were actually producing less and making less was basically a function of the fact that there was just, the systems had become so bloated and therefore slowed down so much because there was so much layers of both middle management and bureaucracy that we, as a company, had never sort like set out to achieve in any way. But it's kind of clogged everything up, and everything had just slowed down. And so we had kind of late June, early July, we had a big sort of debate between me, Ali, and the three other members on the leadership team around what we should do. And in the end, that resulted in us deciding to downsize slightly, which meant making 5 people redundant, which was like Ali and I did that personally, and that was horrible.
Yeah, I can
But
imagine.
we're now at a size which I think is, we're now at 13, which I think is the upper end of what we ever should have been, given the business that we've got, because given the business Ali wants to have, which is something which is agile and lean and can change direction quickly, and adding those extra people had just slowed things down, especially on the YouTube front. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I am now, which is managing most of those people. There's a couple of people that are managed by other people, and kind of how I've developed from having no experience managing people and just being a writer to managing people, hiring people, firing people, and now managing like more people again. And yeah, over that period, I've probably had 10 years worth of experience of being a general manager somewhere, crammed into the space of 2 years with the stuff that's kind of gone on and what we've done and what we've learned and stuff, which is so it's been very kind of in at the deep end, learning. But I suspect if I put myself in the shoes of where I was in April 2020 and compare it to where I am now, the amount of stuff I probably learned, even through experience of like just general experience rather than actually sat down and read a book to learn, it's kind of immeasurable, really.
And obviously something like that with downsizing is bound to happen with a new company, and until you reach that, that's the perfect place to have the company as. And also, is that one of the reasons why you actually, I saw on Ali Abdaal's Instagram that you moved out of the studio a couple of days ago?
Yeah, partly, but not really. That was a kind of separate decision based on the fact that the studio was just like ludicrously expensive, and it was just, it's like central London, it gets a lot of money, and Ali's video, actually, he did a studio tour a few weeks ago and then broke down the finances of that place, and people can go and watch that in terms of what that was costing us, about 10 grand a month. And as I mentioned earlier in this conversation, like, we're not about to go bust, we're not in financial trouble or anything, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can't make decisions around cutting down your spending, which, both downsizing of the team helped with, but also, downsizing of the office meant that our fixed costs in terms of the office have now reduced from what is essentially just under 11 grand a month now to roughly around 5 grand a month, given where we are now and what we're going to be doing moving forward. So we're kind of moving back to a more hybrid model of something akin to what we had in Cambridge, where the filming is done from Ali's place and then the working is done from a WeWork or equivalent. So yeah, more of a hybrid model, but I think it will work, and it will be more effective, especially with a slightly smaller team.
Yeah. So, like, do you still script videos to this day, or do you not touch that anymore?
I personally don't, for Ali. I've recently started doing a bit of scripting for another channel, which I mentioned in that I reached out to via a cold email.
Yeah.
Again, and that worked quite well. And so I do for that, and that's kind of been quite nice to get back into that, because I haven't really written much for the past year and a half. It's been quite depressing how difficult it's been, because I just haven't written much, because it's been too much work on other stuff. But yeah, no, my main focus with the company is kind of just managing people and things and making sure things are running, emails, and sponsorships, and all the fun stuff like that. So I don't do any writing really anymore for Ali.
How do you have time to manage this big company, and also do the writing for this other YouTuber as well?
Good question.
Or is it more of like a hobby that you've got now?
Yeah, I mean, the writing on the side for the other channel is very much like a side kind of thing that I do at the weekends. But I also have kind of 3 or 4 other projects that I'm working on outside of Ali's business, and so there is a lot of stuff going on. I think we've got to a stage now within the business where I'm quite confident that the people who are doing the jobs can do the jobs correctly, and my job is very much in the sense of overseeing them, and so it has freed up a bit more time. That being said, I still commit a lot of time to the running of the business and making sure that things are running to time and running to schedule and on time and successful. And my main metric is revenue. Basically, I'm the general manager of the business. I need to make sure that it's a sustainable business, which essentially means it's making money, and we're covering costs, which we are more, many times over, but also just generally growing and stuff, especially as we're approaching the time when things could be getting quite dicey with the economy. Expect to be in a stronger position, so that's kind of on my mind. But yeah, I'm kind of starting to do some more consulting on the side for YouTube, and as I said, helping out with some other channels as well as some other courses that are being created, because I obviously developed PTA with Ali. So yeah, there's time is a question that comes up regularly in my mind, whether I have enough. But yeah, I like to keep busy.
So you mentioned that you write for it's like a hobby now, and but do you enjoy like managing a business more than like writing as your full-time job?
Yes, yeah, I think that's one thing I've noticed over the past year or so doing this is I like having, I get energy from being very, very busy and keeping multiple plates spinning at the same time.
And bossing
that's
people
kind of
around?
what I find. No, I wouldn't say that. I would like to think that that no one would necessarily level that accusation at me. But yeah, no, I like having an oversight of everything and making sure that things are running, and ultimately ensuring the success of the company. And it's just nice to see over the past 3 years that all the numbers have consistently, which is, I know this is a very privileged position to be in, more broadly given what's happened in the last 3 years, but all the numbers are going in the right direction and consistently going up. And so yeah, that's it's always good to see that kind of thing working nicely.
Yeah. So since you've been in the business, and especially since you've been like the managing of the business, how has the YouTube channel and brand grown since you've joined?
Yeah, I mean, I will caveat this answer by saying I'm not trying to claim that I'm responsible for this growth. But yeah, when I joined, Ali was on around 500,000 subscribers, just below. I think he went over 500,000 almost like a week after I joined, so it was around that time. And he was turning over around £10,000 a month, more or less. And now he's at 3.4 million subscribers, more like give or take.
Yeah.
Probably when this goes live, he'll be there, and it's business generating around 250,000 pounds a month.
Wow.
So it's kind of been a big increase in both revenue and subscriber numbers. And I think like the next stage of his growth will be like this broader appeal with things like the book, which is coming out in 18 months time, still a long way away.
Oh wow.
But those kind of things take a while, and I think that's where 3 million subscribers is great, but ultimately my parents hadn't heard about him before I started working for him.
Yeah.
There's that kind of thing where YouTube is a fairly tight community, which potentially you can get caught up in thinking that you're big on YouTube when actually no one in the public has actually heard of you. Which goes back to your earlier point around like print, like traditional media having a future. It does in the sense that it's still probably the best form of exposure that people can get. But yeah, that's kind of how the brand has grown over the past 2.5 years in terms of pure numbers. Subscriber count, 500,000 to 3.5 million, and revenue from I guess 120,000 a year to 3.5-4 million a year.
Yeah, you mentioned about like how people might not know who Ali is, and like even because with like mainstream celebrities with like TV shows, they might not even get 1 million views or whatever, and they're known more, and there could be people with 5 million, 10 million subscribers on YouTube that you've never heard of because they're in
Yeah,
a totally different genre to what you watch. And
yeah,
that's the
completely.
amazing thing about YouTube, really, because there's something for everyone with it, and you might not discover that complete other side of YouTube.
Yeah, completely. I still find it fascinating that I come across channels that have like 7, 8 million subscribers that I've just
Yeah.
literally never heard of. I find that bizarre. There can be
Yeah.
channels out there that are that big that are just, yeah, I don't know. It always blows my mind. But it also speaks to the opportunity that there is on YouTube to build an audience. Um, Still, like, it's not a closed shop, certainly.
Yeah. You also said about the team downsizing, but it's still
Mm,
13 people. Um,
hmm
for like obviously it's more than the YouTube channel, but why do you need
What do they do? Yeah.
yeah, in a person that doesn't know anything about the company, and you say
Yeah.
13 people for a YouTube channel? What do they do? Why do you need so many?
Yeah. So obviously, yeah. So let's break it down. So we've got Ali, and then there's me, and then beneath that, there is someone who is the head of courses. So that includes Skillshare and a new brand that we're developing called Creatorpreneur. We've released a
Yeah.
few courses under that brand now. And then there's a course writer beneath him because there's a lot of work to do on courses, whether that's writing, whether it's marketing and filming, production. Like, so there's 2 people involved in that. Then we've got PTOA, which we mentioned earlier, and there's 3 people full time on that. So there's a product manager who's head of PTOA, and then there's a head of operations and a head of like student success. So that's already, we're up to 7. We've got a podcast producer who manages Deep Dive, Ali's podcast.
Yeah.
There's just one person on that. We've got a social media and brand manager who manages all of Ali's socials and all of his kind of brand stuff. And they sit under sort of the Ali Abdaal brand area of the business. And then we've got an editor, Christian, who was Ali's first hire, and he edits all the main channel stuff. And so we've got just making sure we've 8, 9. Yeah, and then we've got Dan, who is Ali's EA, so executive assistant. So he does all kind of the admin side of things, and also deals with liaising with listers and accountants with me, and does all like the logistical admin stuff that needs doing. And then finally, we've got Inez, who's part-time, and she is a part-time writer, and she's specifically helping Ali with his book at the moment. We hired her as a writer originally back in like autumn of last year, but she quickly transitioned to kind of just working on the book. So she's helping with research and writing for just the book. And so what appears to be just a YouTube channel has quite a lot of things going on beneath it, and 13 people actually with the stuff that we do. Probably actually not that many. We do a lot of stuff, as I outlined earlier, with the kind of the revenue streams, and so we produce a lot of output for 13 people, which is good, and it kind of makes you proud to be part of it. But yeah, that's where everyone sits and what everyone does.
Yeah. And do you still have Gordon on the team, or is that someone part-time?
Yeah, so Gordon is now kind of more on a freelance basis. So he comes in 1 day a week to help with the filming and any other time we need filming. So for example, like last week we were moving studios, wanted that all filmed, so he came in 2 days a week for that, and we kind of use him on a more sort of freelance basis now, because fundamentally we realized that nothing against Gordon's skill at all. He's a great videographer. It was more just a case of, do we need a full-time videographer?
Yeah.
No. Which is one of the reasons we downsized slightly, and as a result of that, we were like, well, we don't need a full-time videographer, but we would still like you to, Gordon, to come in and film as and when we need you to, and we're happy to put on a retainer for that. And so that's kind of how that relationship's developed, and it also allows him then to carry on doing freelance stuff with other clients as well. So hopefully that still provides some work for him on our side of things. But yeah, that's kind of where everyone sits within the company now. And yeah, that's kind of how things have developed since we downsized.
Yeah, big company. So what is your favorite and least favorite thing about your job?
Ooh. My favorite and least favorite thing. I think my favorite thing it's gonna sound a bit cliche, but like it's not necessarily a favorite thing. It's more something which I'm grateful for, I guess. And it's that I've never come to work and felt it was a chore. It's never felt like a job. It's never felt like a 9 to 5 job. I've never looked at the clock and thought, oh, great, I've got another 3 hours before I can go home.
Yeah.
Never crossed my mind. I mean, I'm sat here at like 8 o'clock. I'm still at Ali's house, and I'm like, I don't really care. So it's never felt like a chore, which is I know it an immensely privileged thing to be able to say, and I know a lot of people don't like the jobs, and I feel very grateful that I'm in that position. That's probably my favorite thing about the job. It's just fun. And then the least favorite thing, I mean, Ali knows this, but he can be quite frustrating sometimes to be changing his mind. You know, the classic example, like about 2 years ago to the day now, he this is a really bad example of it, but it's quite funny. He decided that he wanted to film 100 videos in 100 days
Oh, wow.
for the last 100 days of the year. And on
Big
Monday we
task.
were doing it. Yeah, on Monday we were doing it. He was excited. On
Okay.
Tuesday he decided to scrap it. On Wednesday he was doing it again. On Thursday he was developing the ideas and still doing it. On Friday scrapping it again. Saturday he was doing it again, and Sunday it was off completely. And then the Monday after that we started PTWA. So you know, luckily that happened. But that was kind of a symptomatic example of his tendency to be very kind of classic kind of entrepreneur, kind of looking to move from thing to thing very, very quickly, which sometimes needs to be reined in a bit if we're operating as a bigger team. That's probably the most frustrating thing at times, but I struggle to think of a bad thing or worst or least favorite thing about the company. I don't necessarily have anything to say to that, because yeah, I just love working here and it's really fun. And yeah, I've got no plans on leaving anytime soon.
You mentioned about your favorite thing, and obviously that shows you are in the right job. You are in your dream job, because it doesn't feel like a job. That's when you know. So like, not it might actually be favorite. It might you might enjoy doing it, but what's like the hardest part of your job?
Hardest part.
So a hill you have to overcome.
Yeah, I think kind of effectively managing people and effectively giving feedback to people is something which I've learned. I think one thing that I've learned from managing people, which it's a really obvious thing, but you only really kind of appreciate it when you do start managing people, is that everyone is different. And what I mean by that is that like, everyone needs to be managed differently, because everyone has different personalities. And if you try to manage one person in the same way that you know has worked for someone else, the likelihood is you're going to fail, because that person is going to have a different personality, and they're going to have a different reaction to motivation and feedback, a different like way of motivating that particular person. And so like the hardest thing is, which it gets easier the more you do manage people, and now we've had people on the team for so long, and so you get to know them very well and what works, what doesn't for particular people. But I think that's probably the hardest thing that I've had to overcome, is a strong word, but like manage and deal with is just like getting that approach to managing people correct, and making sure I'm getting that balance between being open and transparent with being honest, because there's sometimes where you really want to be really honest about something, but you're like, yeah, but I want to do it in a way in which comes across well and it's constructive, rather than just like being so open and transparent that actually just becomes rude. You know, you need to be manage those kind of relationships, and that doesn't often happen at all, but it's still like working out the best way to do that, and making sure that people understand where they stand and that kind of thing. But yeah, haven't really got too much that's really hard. Yeah.
That's a good answer. So what is the average day in the life of you?
Average day in my life of me. I mean, up until recently, I would run to work. Now work's a bit further away, so I'm not running to work anymore. I get up very early. I'm like early riser, 5:30, 6. And then I usually either go to the gym or go for a run, and then come into work. Usually in work like 7:30, 8, fairly early on. and then it really depends on what day it is. Like Mondays, for example, are full of meetings and one-to-ones and things like that, which I don't mind at all. Yeah, and the average day does kind of generally go on for 10 hours generally. Because usually we do have, if we do have any meetings with anyone, it's usually with American clients, and they're obviously on time zones, which means that most meetings happen late afternoon.
Yeah.
American clients, American sponsors, I guess, modern clients. But yeah, so that's something. But I don't, as I said, it's fun, so I don't mind at all. It doesn't really feel like I got here at 8 o'clock this morning. I'm still here at 8 o'clock at night, and I don't really care. It doesn't feel like I've been at work for 12 hours. It's just something that I do, and it's fun, and that's all that matters for me.
Yeah. So this is one of the biggest questions I think you're gonna have to answer. Okay, are you ready for this one? Is Ali a good boss?
Oh, good question. Good question. No, he is. He's very good. He's very kind of open to chatting about stuff. He's very open to no, he is. Like there's not really any other way around it. He is good. I can't really think of any examples of what I can say, but he's certainly not someone that I would think I was like a bad boss. I've certainly had much worse, and he's good in what he does. And the very fact that he can run a company where it's fun to come to work means he's doing something right.
Yeah. Is he a good friend as well?
Yes. Yeah.
You're a bit doubtful there.
The only reason I doubt that is like I would class him as a friend, but at the same time, there's that kind of grey area between work and personal life.
Yeah.
Which there always needs to be some sort of separation. So yes, but only caveated by the fact that I think I'm conscious of keeping some sort of distance.
Yeah.
On a professional level, just on that level. But yeah, like I guess the answer is yes.
Yeah, you spend a lot of time obviously together from 10, 12-hour days.
Yeah.
So do you make any of your own content or not?
Yeah. No. Something that Ali's been trying to make me do for the past 2 years. I don't yet. I have toyed with the idea of podcast numerous times. Potentially might be something I do in the next 3 to 6 months. YouTube's not something I've started yet. Again, might be something I do in the next 3 to 6 months. But no, I generally prefer to be behind the scenes, behind the camera. Yeah, just making sure and helping other people grow. Basically, I did the same with like Elizabeth and things like that, and I found that more enjoyable to help other people get up to the stage where they are. So yeah.
You said you were going to get around to your podcast in the Q&A session that you did with Ali in 2021.
I did. You have successfully called me out on that one. Yeah, I did say that. Yeah, as I said, it's been on my mind for a while, and there's evidence of it. Yeah. No, I've got a couple of decent ideas that would make for decent podcasts. I just need to kind of find the time and execute on them really. Because I know I've got a format that would work quite well. So yeah, I just need to get it going basically.
Yeah. So if I told you your younger self from like 10 years ago and said you are managing a business for a YouTube channel and doing $4 million in revenue last year, what would you have thought?
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I honestly do not know. Yeah, it would have been mad. Yeah, it just wasn't even a job 10 years ago. Yeah, I think I would have been one of those people who, when we were talking about the start conversation around trying to explain it to people, even I would have been like, how on earth can you make money off YouTube? And like, I'd have been in that camp. So yeah, I don't know. You know?
Yeah. So it's just mind boggling to you that you're in this position. So what is this is just I don't know, a deep question I thought of. One of the last questions, what is the most valuable life lesson you have learned so far?
In life or working with Ali?
in life?
Oh,
Generally.
in life. It's hard to think of something which doesn't sound horribly cliche. But I think there is definitely value in like thinking that I found that like two things, and they're kind of similar. One is that everything, and this sounds horribly like woo and stupid, but everything happens for a reason. And even like stuff that's pretty crap and horrible, in the end ends up working out. And also the second like connected thing to that, which comes back to the working on the freelance stuff with Hawkeye, is like trust your gut with everything, because it's usually right.
Yeah. So what advice, that is great advice as well, but what advice would you give to someone wanting to work as a YouTuber?
As a YouTuber or for a YouTuber?
Sorry, for a YouTuber. I meant for a YouTuber.
I would develop skills in the area you think would provide the most value, and then offer that value with no expectation of a return initially, at least, and make sure that you are being open with what you're offering, and don't be afraid to ask, because people will probably need help. They're just not asking for it.
Yeah, great advice. And what advice would you give to someone who wants to become successful in YouTube after working with Ali?
Consistency. Title and thumbnail are the most important part of any YouTube video, and yeah, those are probably the two main things. You know, if you don't get title and thumbnail right, no one's going to. Oh no, the third thing is the YouTube algorithm is people. The quicker you understand that you're appealing to people rather than the machine, the more you will succeed.
Yeah. So thank you for coming on today. We've had a bit of a with the recording, but sorry about that. But it's been a great interview. I've learned a lot from it, and it's been really interesting.
No, great. So thanks for having me on, and yeah, best of luck with your own endeavors in the future.
Thank you. You've gone from so many different things, to studying geography, to writing, to now running a multi-million-dollar business.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a ride.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Right, cheers, Ethan.
Bye. So hopefully you liked my interview with Angus Parker. I do want to say a massive thank you to Angus for giving up so much of his time for an interview and redoing some of the questions as well. If you do want to check out more of Angus, the link to his socials are in the description down below. And if you want to check out Ali's channel, that's also in the description down below. Before I go, remember to subscribe if you enjoyed, and also if you want to listen to the show instead of watch, you can. Just search The Brit Show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, or follow the links in the description. Sadly, that is what we have time for in today's show. We will be back on the 23rd of October at the same time with another interview. Please share this video with your friends and family. Like, comment, listen to last week's episode if you haven't already. Listen to this show until the end. Email me, follow me on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, and subscribe, because we are trying to get to 200 subscribers. In the meantime, if you have any suggestions to make the show better, or if you want the chance to come on the show, comment below, message me on Facebook, Twitter or Instagram, or email me at thebritkidshow@gmail.com. So that is what we have time for in today's episode. We will be back on the 23rd of October at the same time, but for now, goodbye.
Bringing you a kid-friendly radio show every Saturday afternoon on YouTube. Broadcasting live at 1 o'clock. Broadcasting live at 1